Okay, hello and welcome to the fourth instalment of our CAFPA Diversity and Inclusion Spotlight interviews. My name is Dominic Lacerdo. I'm the current president of CAFPA. And we're here today with Sammi, Sammi Haynes. How are you, Sammi?
I'm really well. Thank you, Dominic.
Excellent. Just a quick intro. Sammi started her career in the military. A career in finance was the furthest thing away from Sammi's radar. After her military career came to an end, Sammi went on to start her own small business and then build a career at the CBA and now owns and leads Coastal Finance, a diversified brokerage business based in the great state of Tasmania. Sammi won the CAFPA Women in Finance Award at CAFPA's annual awards night in September. Congratulations,
Thank
Sammi.
you.
It's an extraordinary story and one I'm sure you'll love as much as I have. Welcome again, Sammi. We might start right at the beginning, Sammi, when you started your career. Obviously, as I mentioned, you did start your career in the military. What did you learn about yourself and your values in the military, and how has it how did that influence your career?
Yeah, so I enlisted in the Navy in 2003. I come from a strong family military background. My father served in the Royal Navy and then transitioned over to the Australian Navy, and he ended up being Chief Petty Officer. So we had a lot of values growing up as children that we embed from the military lifestyle. And then it was exciting to have the opportunity to go and become a communicator in the Defence Force. It set up a lot of, how can I say, resilience. It taught me to understand what values were growing up. You had to lead with the values with your family, but embedding them was a completely different story. Understanding that it wasn't just you, it was a whole team that you had to support. So that embed a lot of integrity into my life and my careers moving forward. So it was a good idea. I'll do it all over again.
Fabulous. I don't know how many commercial and asset finance brokers would have a military background, but I imagine it's very few. So it's terrific that you've been able to draw upon what you learnt in the military and apply some of that today. Post-military, you started a small business, so you went from a very large organisation, obviously in the military and quite well structured, I would imagine, to starting a small business where it's heavily reliant upon you. And how was that transition? And maybe tell us a little bit about the business and what you learnt from that part of your career.
Yeah, so I went into the business when I was 6 months pregnant with my first child, a 7-day trading business, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to be able to have some work-life balance, having a small. That wasn't the case. However, we did diversitise. We did build strong relationships within our family. My parents were also co-owners of the takeaway shop that we invested in. And then it was a matter of, understanding that you've got to be there 7 days a week. You've got to lead the younger generation for sales assistance, and then also, have a culture of making sure that your customers are at your forefront. So that was a big learning curve because it was very team orientated in the Defence Force and individualised as well, because you had your own little routine and you had all you really had to worry about was doing your job and doing it well and going home. Going into my own business and having, the responsibility of managing people and, making sure that they were, working well, the business was progressing and it was providing enough security to pay wages, etc. So sometimes it was easy and sometimes it was rewarding and sometimes it was just, am I going to sell soon? So it taught me a lot about growth individually, and it taught me a lot about understanding people, which was good.
Yeah, fabulous. And that you had the takeaway shop for, remind me again, was it 5-6 years?
Yeah, 5 years. Yeah.
5 years, 5 years. And what then led, I'm really fascinated, you've gone military, small business, and then you end up working in finance. What happened there? Maybe if you can sort of share some of that with us. Obviously, 5 years later, you had your first child, and then you've had a subsequent child as well. There's two children.
12 months later, yes. Yeah.
Yes.
And then, it became a consistent, that was my life, working 7 days a week, two small children. And it was a change of lifestyle that we needed as a family. And so we decided that we were going to look at the opportunity to sell the business. But in doing so, I needed to make sure that I had something to prepare myself for. And so I started looking for some part-time positions, and the local CBA branch at the time had a position become available. I applied for that position, not knowing anything about finance, and started as a teller at the CBA in our little local branch in Somerset here. It was only a 3-person branch. And I think the success of me was being able to embody all different aspects of the branch network, because it was such a small branch. I learned how to be a teller, a specialist, and look after the officer in charge of the branch as well, which gave me more motivation to become that manager. And that was my goal, and that's what I did. We sold the shop halfway through my first year of training at the CBA, so I was doing both. And then, transitioned into a branch manager full-time role.
Fabulous. And you were at CBA for 9 years?
Just on, so 8.5 years.
8.5 years. And you progressed from what we chatted about earlier. You progressed through various roles at the CBA.
Yes.
Did you have any mentorship? Did you lean on anyone? I wouldn't mind sort of exploring mentors at CBA and in your life, I guess, that have helped you in your career, or sponsors, if you want to call them sponsors. Happy for you to why don't you sort of talk us through that a little bit? Because I think often people in their careers reflect on how important individuals are to the growth of their own careers.
Yeah, so probably within my first year, there was a change in management roles within the CBA. Like, my father has been a business owner for 30 years, so he's been a mentor for me on being the best that I can be, and always, gave me opportunity to do whatever I wanted to do, and I'll be successful in if I give it a crack. My husband supported me with whatever decisions, crazy 7-day trading businesses, having babies, and turning into a role that I'd never studied before. However, when I was introduced to Marco, who was retail area manager of the Commonwealth Bank at the time for Victoria and Tas, he was fundamentally important because he experienced what I did. So he advised me that he started as a teller back in his 30 years prior, and then he progressed up into the steps, and he ended up being, the area manager of all branches in Tasmania. And to this day, I asked his guidance when I was stepping into purchasing coastal finance and, creating this role. And he gave me full support, gave me all the guidance and measures that I had to put into practice, to build people, build capabilities. And so if it wasn't for Marco, I probably wouldn't be where I am today, because he was fundamentally important in this role.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think as we all sort of reflect on our careers over time, there's been individuals that have impact on us, and often it's just that little bit of help or guidance or pointer in the right direction that has a huge impact on our individual careers. And it's good to remind ourselves, actually, of how important those mentors and sponsors are in life.
Yeah.
Your career, Sammi, post CBA, then how did did that transition go from, again, working for a very large organisation, structured career pathway, into working at the point in time with Coastal Finance? You weren't the owner of that business, but you were working in that business. And obviously, though it was a much smaller business than CBA, why that transition? How did that all come about? Interested to hear, and
Yeah.
for you to share with the audience today how that happened.
Yeah. So when I made the choice to resign from CBA, it was more of again, work-life balance. My children were coming into their teenage years, and I really wanted to be present with them. Being the BM in the role that I was in, it was forever challenging to be at home, and I decided to resign from the bank and go into a sister dealership with Toyota. And they had a range of different vehicle options, from Toyota through to Isuzu, Ford, a lot of different principals there. And I took on the business manager role there for the asset lending for commercial and consumer space. And it was a great transition. I learnt a lot. I learnt that there's a difference between retail banking sales and car yard sales.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't really until I found out that there was a brand of Coastal Finance that had been sitting in the background and not used. And that's when, I spoke with Adam, who owned the dealership at the time. And I said, hey, what are we doing? Like, we've got a second arm of finance that we could use. I've got mortgage lending background. I've got, access to be able to, build this. And he said, okay, let's give it a crack. And that's when I referred back to Marco, and he gave me the opportunity to, understand aggregation and, who was best fits for what we were looking at doing. And we started up Coastal Finance together. Adam had no understanding of, that sector, because it was always under the branch of Toyota Finance.
Yeah.
So we started that, and 2 years later, Adam decided he would sell the business to me, and I went out on my own on the 10th of March, and then COVID hit a few days later.
Yeah, wow. Perfect timing, hey?
Yeah. Well, it was actually, we understood all those, building the resilience and the capabilities and, the integrity to give something a crack. If you've started it, you've got to keep going. And it was scary. It was really scary when the whole of our regional space shut down and we couldn't leave the house. And I was like, how am I going to get out there and promote business? And yeah, it was just head down, bum up, and keep going.
I'm really interested actually in the comment you made around, you'd identified that there was this business, Coastal Finance, that was part of the group, obviously. And I think a lot of people in that same situation may hesitate to approach the owner with the idea of saying, well, why don't we reinvent this business? I've got a skill set which I think is complementary. Obviously, coming from the retail branch at CBA, a background at CBA, sorry. But to actually go and have that discussion with your then boss, who obviously has then became a business partner, and then obviously you ended up buying the business wholly.
Yeah.
I mean, often I think, and this often happens across different diversities, women, minorities, they might struggle with opening that conversation up. I mean, clearly you're someone who would back themselves to have that conversation. You had that conversation. Is there anything you can sort of share with the audience as to what, how you're able to do that? Because I think often women in particular, without wanting to sound sexist, might find that a little challenging. Now, I know I find that with my staff sometimes, my female staff, they'll often have fabulous ideas and sometimes are hesitant in coming forward. Have you got some insights there?
Yeah, so I think it was more about, it's very hard to have those discussions, but my values from being a child for my dad, when he's first ever mentioned to me, you can be what you ever want to be, you just got to put in the hard work. That built me to be able to ask questions, to be able to have, integrity in myself, to know if I've got clear capabilities and I'm motivated to do it, then what's the worst someone can say is no.
Yeah.
I think from owning my business prior to CBA, it gave me the tools to understand that all business is important, and whether or not you're working for yourself or whether or not you're working for one of the biggest corporations, if you care about that corporation like it's your own, then you'll set an example for yourself, and then you will strive to be the best that you can be.
Yeah, amazing. It's such a good story. And so you ended up then buying Coastal Finance from your partner. Tell us about Coastal Finance, what it is that you do, who your clients are. Obviously, I mentioned in my introduction that it's quite a diversified brokerage business.
Yeah.
Maybe share with our audience a little bit about your business.
Yeah, okay. So when we created Coastal Finance, initially, it was just for secondary lending options that, mainstream lending at the dealership wouldn't take. However, it grew and we grew with it. And then I implemented, when I took over, that I was going to have a diverse range of options. So you can call it a one-stop shop. It's not a choice of words that we'd like to use, but when we want to focus on our core value, and that's building relationships, it's about being able to build that ongoingly. So, we've got self-employed customers that need commercial lending. We have, consumer people that have bought residential properties and they've gone from a PAYG to a sole trader. And to be able to embed and promote and educate these people, especially the young generation going from PAYG into a sole trader or a company structure, we've got the solutions and the education to be able to help them transition into those lending solutions. That is where I wanted to make sure that we could prepare ourselves to build that relationship ongoing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes great sense now.
Yeah. So, and then by building that structure, it grew relatively quickly. And then that's when, we needed to employ and have a diverse range of, our employees. And so right now we've got 2 asset and personal lending specialists that dedicate themselves for commercial and consumer lending in those products. And then we have our 2 residential and commercial brokers for purchases for properties and self-managed. Yeah.
And so there's 5 staff, I think soon to be 6 from what you mentioned to me previously.
We've got 4, soon to be 5, which is
4 soon to be 5.
Yes, my daughter's coming.
And all female.
Yes.
Just interested, is that a deliberate, was that a deliberate outcome? Was it something that you just happened organically? How did you end up? Because I can tell you this much: it's very hard to find females in certainly the industry that I'm involved in.
Yeah.
And it's very rare to find a business that's got all female representation. So how did that all come about?
Well, it wasn't intentional.
Right.
However, I am a strong believer in having women in industry, whether it be any industry. I think we had a discussion last week. Whilst in the Navy, I wanted to, my ambition was to be a clearance diver. It was a big dream. And I think it was an ambition because I knew it wasn't achievable at the time because there was no women divers. So that really got up my goat a little bit. But then in 2013, we had our first female, Navy diver, and she was trained, and that was great. So that came through in fruition, which was great. But it is all about values. So, like I said, it's never intentional. If a male came in for an interview and he researched my company values and he instilled those behaviours in the interview, they would be successful. Fortunately, my team, they embodied them straight away. So And I know from what I want in my business structure is if you come in with those values and the integrity to build on that, or the capabilities to be able to do so, then everyone's welcome.
Yeah, it's a fabulous point, and
Yeah.
I think values become a nexus that connect any organisation, frankly,
Yeah.
which you keep commenting on, even going back to your military days in the Navy. Having a common set of values that connects and creates that nexus between people is really important. I think that the fact that you've used that as a central way of attracting talent
Yeah.
and keeping talent in the business is fantastic. Um, Speaking of women, congratulations on winning the Women in Finance Award at CAFPA's annual awards night back in September. What does that award mean to you? I know I was at the night. I could see how happy you were getting up, and you're one of the only actual award winners, one of a few, sorry, award winners that was invited to say a few words as well.
Yeah.
What does winning that award mean to you and to your business, obviously?
Yeah, look, to be nominated for the award was probably the most rewarding part. And then being nominated as a finalist was also really encouraging and exciting. And, I researched, the other candidates who were amazing women in finance, and, they had big involvement in the industry. And I honestly didn't think that, I would have the capabilities of being up there amongst those beautiful people. However, when my name was called, my heart for my daughter, she was so excited
Oh, how
that
good!
her mum was nominated for being one of the best women in the finance industry for that award. And
Well, no wonder she wants to come and work for you now.
yes,
Hey?
she's more excited about going to those type of events. However, I've led and worked so hard to build my children and their friends, and just to be able to be that person who can achieve those results by being the best that you can try and be. And whether or not it's building the relationship or being empathetic in nature or just supporting community and people, then yeah, it was an honor to get up there and hold that for the women in this industry.
Oh, fabulous. And I can see how much it means to you, Sammy. It's really quite touching, actually. And I think,
Yeah.
and often, again, you draw upon the connection with your daughter and how proud she was of you, and obviously what you've achieved. It's so beautiful, and obviously family means a lot. Certainly means a lot to you. I can see that
Yeah.
in the way you're answering your questions, and in fact has in many respects driven your career, right? Insofar as you moved out of the military, you had a young child when you started the business and small business, and then you had pressure on family, and that led to different decisions around career. So obviously, look, congratulations again. It is a real honour, and you're right. The calibre of nominees in that category, all our categories, but in particular the Women in Finance Award was outstanding. So
Yeah.
well done to you.
Thank you.
You mentioned community in your last response, and I see on your website that you're pretty heavily involved in your community with sponsorships and supporting other community-based organisations, sporting teams, etc. How important is volunteering to you personally, and I guess from a business perspective?
Yeah, so it's more about being involved. I suppose having my children grow up in sporting in different types of different events, from surf club, motocross. You've got netball, football, all of them, without the support of small business and small communities back then, my children wouldn't have had the opportunity to be able to have a range of solutions to be able to do that.
Yeah,
So
right.
I think I was really excited to come on board with the local football teams and the local basketball teams. Mainly, my goal was to make sure that kids had options and the sporting facilities stayed open. And being on committees and, volunteering my time over the time, I understood, I suppose, how important it was to have connections with those people to help keep the facilities open. Yeah.
Amazing.
It didn't just, I suppose, have satisfaction for myself. It built relationships with my business as well. So on a personal note, it was, to support these events, but on a business perspective, it was about conversation and engagement and, being front of mind for people, because we support them, they support us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fabulous. You mentioned a moment ago the business 5 people, and how do you sort of think about diversity and inclusion in a small team? I think probably 95% of CAFPA members are 5 people or less. So a huge number of our members are small businesses in their own right, and have relatively small teams as well. How do you think about fostering inclusion? Obviously, I mentioned earlier that you've got an all-female team, which wasn't deliberate, but that's the way things have panned out given the nexus around values. How do you foster that sense of diversity and inclusion in a small team?
Yeah, so I suppose openness in conversation. We make sure that we have open conversations, we engage with each other, we make sure that everyone's voice is heard. So that's probably one of our strongest, embedded qualities here, is that everyone's included and everyone has, their input on how the business, not so much rush, but how we can make it perform better. So can we do more, better, different, or less? And then everyone has, an option to create some diverse business solutions to, make it happy and, work effectively, I suppose.
Yeah, excellent. Listen, anyone who's customer facing should be listened to all the time, right? Because at the end of the day, as you say, customers are so important, and often as businesses grow, people listen less to customers. And I think if you're able to draw upon that direct customer, including your own, obviously, experience when working out what you can do. What was the phrase you just used? Good, more.
Or less.
So what was it?
More, better, different, or less.
Where did that come from? More, better, different, or less? Where did you learn that?
That's actually an embedded value that I took on from CBA. So that's one of their visions that we would have with our teams. What can we do more? What can we do better, different, or less? So it gives an opportunity to understand what our weaknesses are, but also build on our capability by understanding this difference, and we can diverse solutions and, just embed different behaviours.
I love it. I think, and I like the fact that you've got more and less in the same sort of image. In that sometimes the best business decisions are to not do something, right, or do less of it. So I like that. I'm going to borrow that. More, better, different, or less. I like it.
CBA, so you can borrow it from me.
We'll acknowledge CBA then in this discussion. Thank you, CBA. Sammi Haynes, has been fabulous conversation. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your time. And I've got a few takeaways. Certainly more, better, different, less. I love that. Congratulations on winning the Women in Finance Award. Clearly, it means a lot, and it's terrific to see that actually from a executive level or non-executive level and CAFPA, to see the impact that it can have on our members and on the industry more broadly. So thank you again for your time. It's been a fascinating discussion. I hope your career continues to evolve and the business continues to go from strength to strength, as I'm sure it will, given those values that you cherish so dearly. So
well, without and support from industries like CAFBA and, MFAA, etc., and our aggregators. We can't be where we are today without the support from, those associations. So
Good on you. Thanks again.
thank you.
Bye.